Mm-hmm. That is true. Yeah. Yeah.
To not, please don't forget to the larger camera. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Perfect. Thank you.
Do you see that she moved a little bit towards the... Yeah. Mm. Yeah.
We're waiting for Governor Mills to come and do his press conference. She's going to talk to his official in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Camera set to time of day.
Sounds good. I don't know how long it will be, but yeah, I'll watch. I usually just write like 12:01, 12:05. But if I hear anything really good, I'll just take a look. Are you getting angry? Oh no!
I got it out of the refrigerator because I brought it yesterday. But my edit was on my break and then I left in my editing.
Oh no. Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
afternoon. Thank you for joining me today. And to all members of the media who are present, please make sure that our ASL interpreter is visible in your shots for the duration of this press conference. I want to begin my remarks by thanking the members of the Independent Commission for their dedicated, deliberate, thorough, and transparent work over these past many months. In the aftermath of the horrific attack on our friends, family, and fellow citizens, when darkness descended on the city of Lewiston, on our state, and when the depth of our grief seemed infinite, Attorney General Fry and I entrusted the members of the Independent Commission with a solemn duty to put to use their extensive legal, investigative, and mental health experience and expertise, their impartiality and their integrity, and their unflagging determination to establish to the greatest extent possible the unvarnished facts of what happened on October 25th, 2023, and the circumstances that led up to and followed that tragic event. On behalf of the nearly 1.4 million people of the great state of Maine, I thank the 7 members of the Independent Commission, as well as its staff, for maintaining the objective pursuit of truth as your guiding star. I also thank them for treating the many people who came before the Commission under difficult circumstances, most notably the family of the victims, treating them with compassion and respect that they deserved. And I thank those who spoke before the Commission, especially the survivors and family members of victims, who summoned remarkable strength and amid unspeakable grief to share crucial information. Thank you as well. The Independent Commission, after spending hundreds of hours of their time without compensation to listen to voluntary and compelled testimony, to review thousands of documents and meticulously uncover and assemble the available facts, they have fulfilled the duty we entrusted to them. Over these past several weeks, I've closely reviewed the findings of the Independent Commission, their final report, using the days since its release to carefully read and reread the conclusions contained in its 215 pages. In reading the report, I brought to bear my nearly 50 years of experience as well, including that as a private attorney for 16 years, as a former assistant attorney general who prosecuted major crimes, as the district attorney for Franklin, Oxford, and Androscoggin counties, including, of course, the city of Lewiston, as the attorney general of the state of Maine, and now as governor. So I stand before you today to say that I have full faith and confidence in the facts as determined by the Commission, and I agree with the conclusions that the Commission has reached. This report, though, was disturbing and painful to read. In the months preceding the shooting, the family of the perpetrator repeatedly raised concerns about his declining mental health to multiple authorities. Despite those warnings, those authorities, chiefly the Saginaw County Sheriff's Office and the U.S. Army Reserve, missed many opportunities to intervene, to reduce the risk that the perpetrator posed to the people of Maine, and very possibly to have changed the course of events. On a number of occasions, the Saginaw Sheriff's Office and members of the U.S. Army Reserves disregarded the facts, failed to follow established procedures, and demonstrated a callous neglect that contributed to the tragedy of October 25th. I do not say this lightly, because I know every day in communities across Maine, dedicated law enforcement officers patrol our roads, safeguard our cities and towns and our natural resources, always ready for that one urgent call to protect life and security of our citizens and to uphold the law. But in this case, we have to acknowledge that the Saginaw County Sheriff's Office, Sergeant Schofield in particular, could have and should have done more. I have read the independent review that the Saginaw County Sheriff's Office paid for last November. That review concluded that the responding officers followed the law and their training with the information that was available at the time, and that they acted reasonably. But in light of the Independent Commission's authoritative report, I do not find that analysis persuasive. As the Independent Commission's report makes clear, the Saginaw County Sheriff's Office was well aware of the declining mental health of the perpetrator and was warned that he could pose a danger to himself or others. The office could have, but did not seek an involuntary commitment order. They could have, but did not invoke Maine's extreme risk protection order law, despite having probable cause that the perpetrator was mentally ill, that he posed a likelihood of serious harm, and that he possessed, controlled, or may have acquired a dangerous weapon. They could have, but did not, consult their own new mental health liaison to help secure the perpetrator's cooperation. Instead, that deputy attempted to pass off the responsibility for securing that man's weapons to his family. He canceled the File 6 warning about this armed and dangerous perpetrator, and he closed the case. We have to acknowledge as well that the U.S. Army Reserve, Captain Reamer in particular, should have but did not follow through on a plan to talk to the perpetrator. The Army Reserve should have but did not return multiple phone calls from the perpetrator's sister, who was trying to convey her deep concerns and seek help. They should have but did not follow up on the recommendations of the psychiatric nurse practitioner after the perpetrator's mental health commitment, despite leading the practitioner to believe that they would do so. They should have but did not share all the important information that they had about the perpetrator with the Saginaw County Sheriff's Office, which might have better informed the Sheriff's Office decision-making. They should have but did not take other steps as outlined in the Army Reserve procedures that could have removed this perpetrator's weapons. Instead, at multiple critical junctures, members of the U.S. Army Reserve ignored, downplayed, and failed to share information with other law enforcement or take action that could have changed the course of events. At its core, this tragedy was caused by a colossal failure of human judgment by several people on several occasions, a profound negligence that, as the Commission rightly stated, was an abdication of responsibility. As I've said in the past, understanding the facts and circumstances of this tragedy is a cornerstone of healing. Another cornerstone is accountability. Well, this fall, the people of Saginaw County will have before them an opportunity to judge both Sergeant Schofield and Sheriff Mary, and I urge the people of Saginaw County to read this report and to consider it deeply as they decide who should be the next sheriff of Saginaw County. This independent commission report should inform that very important decision. When it comes to the Army Reserve, in July they issued a report, along with an independent review of that report. noting their failures and the disciplinary actions they've taken against 3 individuals in the chain of command who were responsible for those failures. That report also makes recommendations to improve the oversight and care of Army Reserve soldiers in the future. So this morning, I sent a letter to the United States Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, asking for an update on the status of those recommendations and urging him to ensure that they are fully implemented in as timely a way as possible. And today I'm also announcing my support for forthcoming federal legislation being drafted by U.S. Senator Collins and U.S. Senator King to direct the military to fully utilize state crisis intervention programs like Maine's to help prevent future tragedies. At the state level, in the many months since this tragedy, I have sat with myself and my own conscience, reflecting upon what is right for Maine in the wake of Lewiston and the tragedies of suicide and domestic violence that are all too prevalent in our society. I've tried to take a broad view of violence in Maine, and I've asked myself, what wise and prudent actions can we take to restore the personal and community sense of safety that was shattered by the tragedy of October 25th, and to anticipate and potentially prevent other acts of violence. Throughout my time in office, I've tried to bring people together, law enforcement, lawmakers, public health, and many others, to achieve enduring reforms that strengthen public safety, that protect our constitutional rights, and that honor Maine's long-standing outdoor traditions. After the tragedy, I spoke with people and organizations all across Maine. I listened to ideas and concerns, and I tried to develop a balanced approach to this difficult issue of violence. What I heard from people across the state is that they recognize the problem of gun violence. They see it in acts of domestic violence, of suicide, and mass shootings nationwide. Each person had ideas about what we could do to address the problem, and each of these ideas was different. But what was not different, what was largely agreed upon, was an overarching belief that violence prevention is important, that we must strengthen our mental health system, and that dangerous people should not have access to firearms. So we strengthened Maine's Extreme Risk Protection Order law, and we introduced legislation that enhanced the public safety and that strengthened Maine's mental health system. We strengthened our extreme risk protection law to clarify that law enforcement can seek a warrant signed by a judge in unusual circumstances to take a person into protective custody. And that provision in law has already been put to use. We further strengthened our existing law to provide for reciprocity for those who are under risk protection orders in other states, providing law enforcement with yet another tool to remove the weapons of someone deemed dangerous. Now, I recognize that there are some who argue that the law is cumbersome. For example, some have questioned the necessity of taking an individual into protective custody or conducting a mental health assessment to determine risk. Some people suggest that these are unnecessary hurdles that only make the removal of weapons more difficult. But I believe that these steps strengthen our law because they protect the due process rights of all of us. They make the law more constitutionally sound and less subject to being struck down if someone were to challenge it. And these assessments, these mental health assessments, serve as a vehicle to identify behavioral health needs and refer that person to mental health services. It's clear that following last year's tragedy, more and more law enforcement officers across the state are taking our extreme risk protection law seriously. They've taken state-provided training on its use, and they're using it now on a daily basis to remove firearms from those who should not have them. There's no better testament to that than the fact that it has been used 330 times in the past 318 days since October 25th. 330 times. In other words, the law has been used more than once a day on average since the shooting in Lewiston, in courts all over the state, about 15 times more than had been used in the preceding 3 years that it had been in effect. Maine's extreme risk protection order law works. In addition to strengthening the extreme risk protection order law, we also extended the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, or NICS, to advertised private sales of firearms. And we provided incentives for background checks in those cases and situations where people are selling to someone they don't know, private sales. And we're establishing an Office of Violence Prevention at the Maine Center for Disease Control and Prevention to coordinate and promote efforts to reduce violence. We're creating more crisis receiving centers, including in Lewiston, that build on the success of the one we created in Portland, allowing any person experiencing a mental health crisis or substance abuse crisis to get immediate, appropriate, and no-cost care. We're strengthening mobile crisis teams that will be dispatched to a person in crisis through 988, Maine's 24/7 hotline, crisis lifeline. All those things we've done in recent months. You know, I recognize that on the one hand, these actions are too little to those who believe that more is needed. And on the other hand, they're too much to those who believe that the opposite, that more is needed and less is needed. But violence is not a simple problem, nor is the remedy a single, simple measure. And these actions represent progress. They do not trample on anybody's rights. They are practical, common sense measures that are not extreme or unusual. They are not a cookie-cutter version of some other state's laws. They are Maine-made, and they are true to our culture and our long-standing traditions while meeting today's needs. I also want to take a moment today to acknowledge all of the first responders and emergency personnel who played a role in responding to this tragedy. Whether you were a dispatcher, a police officer, fire or EMS personnel, hospital staff, victim advocate, ASL interpreter, or other personnel, I'm very deeply grateful for your efforts. That night, all of you were confronted with an emergency like the likes of which you've never faced before, with 2 active shooting sites and dozens of people killed and injured, numerous reports of other active shooting sites, and a simultaneous statewide manhunt, following up on thousands of leads and tips. All of you, along with the Maine State Police, met this challenge with courage and compassion, providing emergency medical support to survivors, gathering and preserving evidence for possible prosecution, locating the body of the perpetrator, protecting and informing the public, and coordinating hundreds of officers, more than a dozen tactical teams, and several federal agencies all at the same time. So on behalf of all Maine people, I thank our state police officers, especially Commissioner Sawchuk, Colonel Ross, as well as Chief St. Pierre of Lewiston and Chief McGee of Lisbon, and all of the first responders who came out that night. They answered the call of duty. While we wish that the perpetrator had been located sooner, I think the Commission is correct to recognize that the collective work of law enforcement personnel prevented further loss of life, both among police personnel and the people of Maine, the general public. In addition to the leadership of the Maine State Police coordinating all of these officers, I want to commend the Maine State Police transparency throughout the commission process. They made thousands of pages of documents available to the commission and to the public. They fully cooperated with the commission. And throughout the process, the state police have been forthright in their acknowledgement that if there are opportunities for improvement, they want to pursue them. To that end, the commission report encouraged a full after-action review of the Department of Public Safety's response with an independent review. This morning, the Department of Public Safety released that after-action report and announced that the report will undergo an independent review by outside experts with law enforcement experience. I applaud that move. The after-action review report also outlined a series of primary recommendations to improve communication and coordination during any future police responses. Those recommendations include providing additional training to Maine State Police officers and personnel on active shooter, crime scene, and incident command system protocols. The incident command system used during the Lewiston tragedy and other emergencies establishes a clear chain of command that should be followed to coordinate the deployment of federal, state, county, and local responders during a crisis and avoid confusion. They also recommended working with federal partners to develop protocols for handling significant incidents and or mass casualty incidents, and to train local hospitals on following those protocols. They recommend reviewing and updating policies to ensure that any response to events involving deaf and hard of hearing individuals or people who have English as a second language or persons with disabilities include accessible information sharing and support. And finally, they also recommend training supervisors on providing psychological support to their employees following incidents of this sort, which can leave so many seen and unseen scars. I agree with and I support these primary recommendations, and I want to see them implemented. To that end, over the coming months, the Maine State Police will sit down with my budget office to determine what financial resources are necessary to implement these primary recommendations. Following these conversations, I will ask the legislature, as part of my biannual budget request in January, to approve funding that will allow the Maine State Police to fully implement these recommendations. While we fervently hope that law enforcement officers never again have to answer an urgent call like that of October 25th, we want to make sure if that call comes again, they are ready and that they have learned from the challenges they experienced that terrible night and the hours and days that followed. Lastly, as I've said before, a cornerstone of our ability to heal as a people and as a state is knowing the truth about what happened on October 25th and the circumstances that surrounded that tragic day. The independent commission has delivered those facts, and with this report, we take another step forward on that long road to healing. I think it's important to acknowledge we're all at different points, different stages of healing. Our state, the people of Lewiston, the families, everyone impacted. Some may still feel frustrated and angry. Some may feel scared. Some may feel grief and sadness or frozen in time, watching the world move on while they live on and missing the people they loved. A feeling that this last year passed both in the blink of an eye and a lifetime. I know I feel all those things at times myself. I want people to know that those feelings are okay. I have found that the best antidote, if you will, to the anger, grief, and fear is love. It is love, compassion, understanding, and support. It is community. And that is the state of Maine. We have lost 18 people, family, friends, neighbors, loved ones. Many more were injured, both physically and emotionally. In a small, close-knit community like Lewiston, and in a small, close-knit state like Maine, most everyone knew somebody who was directly impacted by this tragedy. But what is special about Maine, and what I've always loved about our state, is that in the darkest of times, in the depths of our most difficult challenges, we're there for one another. Whatever you're feeling, however long you feel it, know that you're not alone. So let us all do our part to protect each other, to listen when someone asks for help, and to speak up when something doesn't feel right, to offer our grace to those who are still grieving, and our love to the people of Lewiston. We will always remember and pay tribute to the victims, the survivors, and their loved ones, and we will always remember how we came together as one people and as one state to support one another. Thank you. Happy to take a few questions. Hold on one second. Thank you for that. Look, the commission, 7 of them were the total, something over 220 years in the aggregate of experience in the criminal justice system, psychiatry, psychology, forensics, courtroom procedures. They brought to bear that experience and background in a determination of the facts surrounding October 25th. They were not asked, and they did not offer policy recommendations or a deep analysis of systems, as you call it. They made observations about how certain things failed, I think, and that's an important thing. They were not asked to make policy recommendations because they did not want to, nor did I want them to get involved in the politics of policy making across the board. I guess that's the simple answer. We know from their report our extreme risk protection order law was in effect and could have been used. They were quite clear that Deputy Schofield, for instance, had probable cause to believe that this individual had a mental health issue and was dangerous and had access to firearms.
So
Yes.
you mentioned that you want the people saying the voters there review the report carefully and make a decision based on what was based on that. What are voters supposed to do if both of the candidates were involved in events leading up to the tragedy?
I'm not a voter of Saginaw County, but I think that the facts contained in this report could lead to judgments about the actions or inactions of certain deputies, including Deputy Schofield, for instance.
And the sheriff, Sheriff Mary?
The sheriff isn't mentioned in the report. It's his department. They have to make a decision about who the chief law enforcement officer of that county should be. Yes, I'm sorry, you had your hand. The commission has finished its mission, its mandate, according to the executive order. They spent 9 months, something like 16 public hearings, or so, and you know, digesting thousands of pages of documents, talking to so many witnesses, and they submitted their report. The work that they were assigned to do is complete.
The commission's report gives a pretty thorough analysis of steps taken and not taken by both the sheriff's office and the reserve. Gives much less information about shooters' medical care in the hospital in New York and any follow-up care that didn't happen after that point. Are you worried that when that part of the story is not fleshed out, we're potentially missing problems, holes in the system, or mistakes that individuals made that had an impact here?
Thanks. I think take this commission report in tandem with the Army's report and the OIG report on the Army's report, and the discussions and legislation being drafted by our 2 U.S. senators, that you see an emphasis on more information sharing between the military and local law enforcement, and using recommendations for the Army, the military, to use any available resources at the state level, including an extreme risk protection order, like the SAFE Act in New York and the red flag law that was in New York, in effect in New York. So I think those recommendations in tandem address that.
Maine obviously has a yellow flag law that's been discussed quite a bit since the shooting. Would you support a red flag law as proposed or supported by Supervisor Kavanaugh?
That bill did not get a hearing. What we did do is we took a number of significant steps, made a number of significant changes, and I think we made a lot of progress in protecting the public safety and protecting people's constitutional rights. There are a variety of versions of so-called red flag laws across the country, but I think that right now, these laws, most of which just took effect, sorry, I'm rushing, most of which just took effect a couple of weeks ago, need to be fully implemented, and that's my goal, that's my priority right now.
Are there more bills that you'd like to see in the final year's process in terms of trying to prevent another case like this beyond the United States with certain information?
Beyond those, well, I want to make sure that our mental health system is robustly funded and that the recommendations we already have are implemented. Mobile crisis teams and the so-called living room places of respite for people encountering mental health crises are important. It takes a while to get those up and running. Those are things that I'd like to see happen.
We believe that the main case police report was actually completed a while ago. Should they have been released sooner?
The report I'm referring to was just issued this morning, the after-incident report.
Remember that it was completed a while ago. Should they have been released sooner than that?
It was completed and issued this morning. So I guess that's the answer.
Governor, you spoke about the improvement of the yellow flag law this year
Mhm.
and expanding background checks and private sales. And you also talked about these culture and traditions, often not friendly and so forth. Can you explain why you didn't sign the 72-hour waiting period law that went into effect? And can you also explain why something like other states have done after 19 an assault weapons ban, where some people say there's a needle you can stop rocket cars? It's just off the table in the case.
What you just said was not part of the commission's report, but Look, there are numerous proposals around the country and in the Congress of the United States. I'm not going to opine on any particular one. I think, I really think we have a very effective law in place right now. Very effective extreme risk protection order. I don't know any other state where this kind of law, anything similar to it, has been implemented on a daily basis in a small state of fewer than 1.4 million people. Law enforcement across this state are taking this very seriously, and we are protecting public safety and community safety. That's going on right now. I guess I'm not going to offer an opinion on any other law that's not in front of me, any other proposal that's not in front of me, frankly. There'll be a lot of discussion, I'm sure, but right now, I just want to fully implement what we have in place, including the changes that just took effect a couple weeks ago.
We still have questions about what happened not even years after the government was observing it. So, I mean, what happened in New York as well? What happened in the military? And then as a follow-up to what I was asking about, are you saying that sheriff Mary and private candidate didn't really mention project Schofield today and how he was identified as Schofield?
I'm simply asking the voters of Saginaw County to do their due diligence, read the report. There's abundant information in there about the sheriff's office, and
Schofield is the only one mentioned.
he's the one mentioned in the report.
Think there should be a writing candidate or can a writing candidate, someone else? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure that would even be legally appropriate at this juncture, but no, I'm not going to offer that opinion. Look, the voters have the ultimate responsibility to act with integrity and to hold public officials accountable.
To circle back, though, what questions do you still have about what happened? Are there unanswered parts still? And that can include what happened with the military in New York, things that are outside of their purview.
I think this commission report, over 200 and something pages of it, is very thorough. They accessed every bit of information that was possible to access. They answered a lot of questions. And they gave us the truth. They committed to and fulfilled an unwavering obligation to seek the truth and the facts of what happened before, during, and after October 25th. I don't have other questions regarding their mission, regarding their observations and factual findings.
I'm curious about why the government released from psychiatric care in New York, and the Army report is conclusive on that. It gives some even narrative in that report that suggests that where the investigator says, we're not sure if he was released because it's mandatory, if mandatory overhead having committed expired, or if it expired because he was released. And that's a pretty big question.
I think the commission report itself talks about why he was released. If I'm not mistaken, I believe they said he was released because he had improved, he was taking medication, etc. He met the legal requirements of being released, legal eligibility for release at that time.
One more. You were released this before, but this report was released 17 years ago. Why wait to comment on it until now?
Have you read every word of it? It's a pretty detailed report. I don't want to give it summary review and pretend that I know everything that's in it. I wanted to read it carefully and reread it carefully, and read the Army report, and read the state police after-action review as well. Just the appendices alone are very informative about what we have available in our law right now, what would have been available perhaps in New York, those kinds of things. So I think it rightfully took 17 days to receive and review the report. I wasn't going to give it short shrift.
Governor, now that you've had a chance to see all of the different entities involved in this situation, do you feel that there's any one in particular that might bear more of the responsibility in this case? The Army, reservists, the hospital, the sheriff's office? Is there any one that you would rank higher than another, or is all people in your mind?
What the commission report says is a number of things that did not, could have, should have, but did not occur. And that applies to many different people in on many different occasions throughout this report. You draw your own conclusions from that. But was there one particular thing that could have prevented this? I can't say. There are a number of things that might well have changed the course of this tragic history. We'll all learn from that. Hopefully, all those who are involved, all those mentioned in the report, will learn from that.
Thank you all.
Thank you.